omens. Give me sight beyond sight.
Greetings, Starfighter. You have been recruited by the Star League to defend the frontier against Sewer and the Kodan Armada. Get ready. Prepare for blast off.
Hey, Doc, we better back up. We don't have enough road to get up to 88.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Remember, no matter where you go, there you are.
This is 80's Reboot Overdrive podcast.
We were dancing just like Swayze when Jennifer Grey had a nose. Oh, how I miss the 80s, but I'm too young to really know. Too young to know.
Oh my god. That is like so dated.
Alright, this is 80's Reboot Overdrive, and I am Dave. And online today I've got co-host Rose.
Hi.
And we have a special guest, Kelly. Say hi, Kelly.
Hello, everybody. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us tonight.
Well, that's no problem at all.
Kelly, real quick, just for our listeners' sake, do you want to kind of explain, I guess, your social media? Because you're generic mail, right?
Genericmail.com, Generic Mail DJs.
Right.
Generic Mail 80s on Twitter. We have a whole mess of YouTube mixtapes of new wave 80s bands and other 80s pop music. And we've got our YouTube account has 8,000 plus subscribers, and we're just about approaching 4 million views. So we've got quite a following on there. And we have a website, genericmail.com, that has a lot of traffic too. But I'm just glad to be here tonight with everybody.
It sounds like it's awesome. Just a ton of 80s music. That's definitely a topic I know that Rose is a firm believer in.
Oh, definitely. I listen to you at least 3 to 4 times a week.
Well, thanks. You'll like what's coming up tomorrow. I've got another one that I think you'll be very fond of tomorrow morning. So listen for that.
Oh, I will. Thank you for letting me know.
Oh, little teaser.
Yep.
And for our listeners, Rose is commuting. So if you're hearing background noise as she talks, that's the reason.
Yeah, train whistles, announcements to not put your feet on the seats, the usual stuff.
Yep, exactly. But it's okay. We can work with that.
Yeah.
So tonight's topic is 80s TV shows. What I've done was I've asked Kelly and Rose to come to the podcast with 3 TV shows that were on in the 80s to talk about. I did put the little bracket in there that says non-cartoon, because I know sometimes when you throw that out there and you say, let's talk 80s TV shows, somebody always wants to throw in a cartoon, and we've definitely had that kind of conversation before. I'm not opposed to having the conversation again, because I loved 80s cartoons, but I wanted to give some love to the other stuff, the sitcoms, the dramas, the sci-fi shows. So I'm interested to find out what they've come to the table to talk about. Normally with a guest on, I would normally let the guest go first. But I think I have something that's going to set up the beginning of the show, so I'm going to run with it.
Nice.
Yeah. It's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to meet the Muppets on the Muppet Show tonight. It's time to put on the makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to raise the curtain on the Muppet Show tonight. And now let's get things started. Why don't you get things started? It's time to get things started on the most sensational, inspirational, celebrational, Muppetational. This is what we call the Muppet Show. And then you have Gonzo's, trumpet. I have to start that because because as a young kid in the early '80s, Muppet Show was it, man. If the Muppet Show was on, that stopped me in my tracks. I had to find out who's going to be the special guest star on for that night. Had to watch. Muppet movie came out, got me even more in love with the franchise.
Sure.
So as a kid, one Christmas, my older sister and I, we always exchanged gifts, and there's one year that I remember I really wanted the Kermit the Frog stuffed animal. And so one year she was like, "You tell me what you got me, and I'll tell you what I got you." And I says, "Well, not being that trusting, I had her go first, and she told me that she'd gotten me the Kermit the Frog uh, stuffed animal." And so she tells me this. I'm excited about it. I'm like, "Yay, I can't wait for Christmas because I'll get the Kermit the Frog doll." And and then I tell her what I got her, and I'm very truthful. Turned out she lied to me. So
Oh.
she never got me the Kermit the Frog doll. I never got it that year. It wasn't until many, many years later where she made it up to me for Christmas and gave me the Kermit the Frog doll. But I had to tell that story because I just thought it was, such a great tie-in for the Muppet Show. For
Sure.
me, my favorite was Fozzie the Bear.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, Kermit started out in Washington, D.C., which is my neck of the woods way back. I guess Jim Henson was working, and I don't even know the whole story, but I think he was working at the NBC affiliate here, and he came up with that for a show that they had on the air there. And then, of course, back then, no one understood the value of IP, so I guess he was able to get out of the deal with that TV show and take it on the road. But yeah, I always loved Kermit the best. I also liked wow, now the names I liked the names are escaping me though, guys. You got to help me. They're
You got to give me a little more to go on.
Yeah.
the guy the big blue the blue guy that looked like an eagle. Like kind of.
Oh, Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam, he was like a news reporter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I Miss Piggy was the one that you loved to hate, I think.
Oh yeah.
Because she was like kind of funny but kind of scary too as a youngster and kind of mean in her diva way. So I kind of liked her and disliked her at the same time.
I'm sure it wouldn't be the first time somebody's referred to Miss Piggy as a diva.
No. What about you, Rose?
She's definitely one of the best, I'm telling you. And you don't even know how she gets away with half of it, other than the fact that, she's a pig. So that kind of takes you aback immediately, I just remember watching the movies and thinking, you're a what? You're a fashion model? How does that happen?
So, Dave, how do you like, or what's your feelings about the TV show that ABC put out or Disney put out this year?
I watched maybe 2 episodes of it, and it's like one of those things where I was trying to get into it for the nostalgic moment, but it just didn't work for me for whatever reason. I mean, it's one of those things that I kind of have to leave behind in my youth. I can I can rewatch those or introduce those to my kids, the old ones, but like then it's got like the Office kind of tone to it, the new version, and I don't know, it wasn't working for me because I don't need the Muppet Show to be adults.
Right. Well, yeah, and it was kind of awkward because if you expected it to be like, for the kids, there were adult situations and there were, like references to drug use and things, which I'm cool with all that stuff. But I mean, if you wouldn't want your 7-year-old to be indoctrinated to the Muppets with that necessarily.
Right, and I've already got enough shows that I got to watch by myself anyway. I don't need another one that has Muppets. So, but like I said, it's good with, the fond memories. I cherish the Muppet movie. I mean, I loved the song Rainbow Connection back then. Moving Right Along with Fozzie and his Studebaker. Electric Mayhem. Loved all that stuff. I mean, sign me up. I was there. So yeah, that's the Muppets.
I think another aspect of it was all the guest stars that you got to see, because some of them you didn't know, like if Gene Kelly or somebody was on there, you didn't know exactly who that was as a kid. But you probably had seen John Denver or Elton John or someone like that, you would associate with at some level. And so that was always fun because you didn't know who would be on there. I
Right.
think, wasn't Luke Skywalker on there one
yeah.
episode?
Yeah, Mark Hamill was.
Yeah, Mark
Yeah.
Hamill and Chewbacca were on there.
Wait,
Oh, Chewie.
point.
Okay.
Yeah, way better than the holiday special.
by
Holy
leaps
Moses,
and
was
bounds.
it ever. Yeah.
All right,
Listen.
so Kelly, what about you? What's your first show that you want to talk about?
I may go off the map here, and I'll explain the circumstances first, but growing up outside of DC in the early to mid 80s, we didn't have cable, believe it or not. Like, I don't know. I think a lot of the country had cable, but we didn't have it. So all we had was, whatever you could get over the antenna. And that kind of limited my options in terms of some of the budding, cultural exposure you would get from cable channels like MTV or whatever. So a show that I really enjoyed was on NBC on Friday nights. It was called Friday Night Videos. And it was basically their version, a 90-minute show where they showed music videos, which were something that I had never seen. And I didn't have MTV. So it was the only way I could see music videos for the first couple of years. And I always thought that was really neat because, they played a wide variety of artists too. So you got exposed to all kinds of different genres and maybe some artists that you hadn't heard, over and over on the radio stations you were listening to. And I really enjoyed that. And it was on forever. I mean, I think it was on and off until the late into the 90s, in different iterations. But it was really significant for me back then because that was the only way I could see music videos.
Now, take me through the show because I'm drawing a blank. I know that it's popular, but I was lucky enough to have cable, so I know MTV.
Well, yeah.
But did Friday Night Videos have like a VJ that would
introduce? They would have random guest hosts, which I think were kind of it was basically PR where NBC would put people that were in movies they were trying to promote or TV shows would be the guest host, and it was very random. And some of them didn't seem to belong. They're kind of like in the Muppet Show to a degree, where you'd have very random hosts sometimes, but. There were random hosts. Some of the weeks there wasn't a host either. It would just be videos. There was like a voiceover announcer, like a Don Pardo type guy who would just say, this is the Commodores or whatever, and then it would start. And
like the Casey Kasem of music videos.
Yeah, exactly. And okay. I'm sure the guy has the name, but it's escaping me. But you would see these videos, and like I said, they were very random. So, you might see the Commodores and then you would see, like a country artist, and then you might see Journey, or you might see Aha or whatever it was. But they didn't have any rhyme or reason a lot of the time. But it kind of made it fun, too. The other thing that they had that was unique, and I guess kind of you saw it come again with American Idol and stuff later, but they would have a call-in number where you called in to vote for the video of the week.
Where was I at when this was happening?
Well, you guys had cable probably, so it's like this thing wouldn't even register a blip. But
I called in and requested my favorite video.
Well, and it was created, I think, by Dick Ebersol, who was one of the main guys at NBC for their late night programming. So, it was a big thing for NBC, but obviously it was a blip if you had cable, because you already had access to all this stuff. But when you called in the number, this was what I thought was great. It was a 900 number. So they were making money, like every week to get kids to vote. And then they were making a nickel, on every call. It was like incredible.
Wow.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
God love
yeah.
them. But so that was my show, my first show. I'm sorry you didn't register with everybody here.
No.
People out there, they're gonna go, oh man, I remember that.
Yeah, and the Twitterverse I've seen
Yeah.
that one brought up a few times. So it's just because I didn't watch it, but I know it was popular. So, so Kelly, I gotta ask, did you ever have your tape recorder on the side waiting to get that one song recorded?
I don't think I did it with the videos because it was like you had no clue what was going to be on. Like,
Okay.
absolutely no clue. But I definitely remember doing that with the cassette player over and over again with the radio, where they'd say, "Okay, here's Aerosmith," and you want to hit the button at the right time. And and I had probably a dozen of those tapes laying around that had just little clips, hardly edited, kind of like the video channel I have now. But yeah, but it's that was definitely something I did with regularity, was
Nice.
recording off the radio.
Oh, I think we all did.
Yeah. That was awesome. Sometimes I would actually get the talking in first, just to see
That
kind
was
of
that was that
theatrical.
that was part of the charm.
Yeah.
Or I liked it when they did the rope-a-dope and he would talk up your song and then they play another one first, so you would record the first part of Starbucks
The
song,
wrong.
and it wasn't even the
Yeah.
one you wanted.
Yeah.
And
That's
it'd be
okay.
permanently on that mixtape.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so Rose, you're up.
Oh my goodness. I didn't get a chance to talk about the Muppets. I'm like so going to go back into that later.
Oh,
'Cause I
really?
have very
I'm
strong
sorry.
feelings about the Muppets. It's okay. I was getting off the train. I was walking through construction. And I mean, I had you guys muted, so it's okay. But I will stay on topic for now. Hill Street Blues.
Okay.
My grandmother and I watched a lot of TV together through the years. She raised me, so I got kind of conditioned to watching cop shows and lawyer shows and the usual fare that come Mannix, Columbo and all these people, they had these one name, except for Magnum PI. I didn't really like that one. So Hill Street Blues came and I immediately loved the music. The opening, it's just amazing. I love that. And that was kind of my thing. When I would watch a TV show, if I liked the theme song, I would just go with it. To this day, I probably have never actually seen a full episode of Secret Agent Man. But man, I could kill that song in the time frame it was on and then get bored and go watch something else. But that was a good thing. But anyway, so Hill Street Blues was a different type of police show. It was based in Chicago, so I'm from Chicago, so that was awesome. And then the characters in it were just so down to earth, and they weren't corny. And I was so used to them being that way from all the other shows that I'd watched. And they'd have the beginning where the guy would get up there and he's like, okay, I forget, there's a term for it when they bring them all together in the morning and tell them what's going on. We got robberies in this neighborhood. We got this guy doing this over here. And, and he'd end it all with, let's be careful out there. And I'm like, yeah, because cops are important. It was just really just heartfelt. And you fell in love with a lot of the characters because they were genuine. Oh my goodness. And I just really, really truthfully enjoyed the series. And I tried to watch as long as I could. But then other stuff came on. And then they ended up shifting it around quite a bit. And then it got canceled. Or I can't remember what happened. But yeah, the characters and then they kept killing people off. It just really ticked me off. It's like, would you stop doing that?
That was what made it different, though. It's like you were talking about, where we had all been brought up on all those procedurals and the Jack Webb, very just like episodic things that were kind of contained, self-contained. They had the same characters, but they had a beginning and an end. And Hill Street Blues was more of a running narrative where you had the same characters, and you had several storylines that were intertwined and kind of ran through the whole. Some of the threads ran through the whole series, and like you said, unlike in Dragnet where it was always Jack Webb and Colonel Potter, you had people that came and went because they died. And
Right.
in most cases, it wasn't like the actor really died, although I think they had one that did. But
Yes.
they, it was like it was written in a gritty, real way. That was
Right.
how the life would be, for those guys, in that
Exactly.
environment.
And if you think about it, this show was one of the forerunners, to set off other shows like not LA Law, but what's that one? It's been on NCIS, Law and Order, all of those constantly running
Well, and
storyline.
then this one kind of ran hand in hand with what was the hospital one? Not ER. The one before that, Saint Elsewhere, was
St.
another
Elsewhere.
show
Yeah.
that kind of was the same idea where there was like a running narrative, and there were a group of actors that kind of were on the show. Some of them left or died. People died every week on that show, and it was very real and gritty, and there was a lot of emotion, and the writing was believable, or more so than Emergency or Adam 12 or something from the last
Yeah.
decade before that. And that made it way more compelling.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused. You mentioned Dragnet, and then you mentioned these other people, and all this time I thought it was Dan Aykroyd and Tom Hanks.
that was.
Here.
Well,
Oh, you're
yeah,
so young, Dave.
it's like right neighborhood, wrong house. But yeah, no, they but Dan Aykroyd actually, I mean, that was a fairly, even though it was a goof, I mean, it was like that's pretty much how Jack Webb delivered the lines, but
yeah.
he wasn't goofing around. It's like that was his, that was how he.
Yeah, that was his
he
demeanor.
acted.
And Dan Aykroyd later on said that he was just enthralled to play that part. I think he even, like, as soon as he knew they were making the movie, he's like, "Oh, pick me." He wanted that part. And he nailed it. He totally nailed it. It's awesome.
I believe that he wanted it too, because he was into that kind of thing. I was trying to think of anything else I knew about Hill Street Blues, but basically it's like you said, it was kind of a turning point for our dramas on TV, because it set a new precedent in terms of reality and the level of writing and acting.
So my next pick is probably going to be somewhat of an obscure one, but I'm curious to know if you guys know it. It's a TV show called Misfits of Science. No?
Sounds familiar.
Don't know it. I remember the name, but I couldn't tell you a single actor that was in it or anything about it.
Yeah, okay. So it was on 1985 to 1986, and in case you haven't guessed, I'm going kind of chronological in my life with my picks. So 85, 86 would be my early teens or mid-teens. And what it is it was a series drama, science fiction kind of thing. Really, the only name that you're probably really going to get out of it was Courtney Cox was in it.
You're kidding.
Okay.
Yeah, very young Courtney Cox.
Wow. Is that before or after the Bruce Springsteen video?
I believe that was after.
Okay.
Yeah, because I believe that after that video, she was going to try, because I'd read up on this somewhere, that she was trying for another series, and then they had this one going on, like, across the street or something like that, and she just tried out for it on a limb and then ended up getting it, something along those lines. But the premise of the show, there's this actor, Dean Paul Martin. He plays Dr. Billy Hayes. He's a research scientist. He's got he's trying to study people that have extra superhuman abilities, and trying to find out if they're going to be well. He just wants to study them, but of course the people that are behind his company are secretly working for the government, so of course they want to weaponize things. But it's kind of it's a very lowbrow drama, even though it's listed as a drama, but there's a lot of humor in it. There's this actor called Kevin Peter Hall, He plays L. He's this really tall guy, and he's got the ability of when he hits a pressure point in the back of his neck, he becomes miniaturized. So think of just a little bit bigger than like Ant-Man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then the one that was my favorite was this guy named Johnny B. He was a rock and roll musician. He had gotten electrocuted on stage, but then he gave him the ability to shoot lightning bolts from his hands. And then
Oh, wow.
if he was ever around something that would be electrical, he would end up pulling juice from it. So like he really couldn't even travel in cars because the battery would end up going dead because he would, suck the power out.
Wow.
Okay.
Courtney Cox, she had the telekinetic teen. She was kind of a juvenile delinquent, so she had telekinesis. So overall, I really got into the show, even though I think it only lasted about 16 episodes. So,
Wow.
So they were kind of like the X-Men, really. Like it was like the lowbrow X-Men because they all had a different mutation.
right,
And
right.
they could solve crimes or do good or figure things out, right?
Yeah,
It sounds like.
and even more of that humor part is they would travel around in an ice cream truck.
Sure.
Oh.
So yeah, even more craziness right there. Good 80s-ness right there.
I bet you the special effects were on point too with the 80s, the technology they had in the 80s, and probably the budget that was allowed for it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. In fact, the guy that I mentioned, Johnny B, he also could do a speed running. So you would have the early Flash TV show where you just had that
Oh,
blur for a moment.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
that's what you would have with him every so often.
sure. Well, it sounds like something that I should look up because I'm kind of into the kitschy, kind of funny and quirky kind of cultural occurrences that I missed, So I'll probably look
Yeah.
for that online.
Yep.
That's on Netflix.
Yep. Misfits of Science. I would definitely recommend checking it out. But it is definitely a product of its time. So expect 80ness.
Well, 80ness is equivalent to
nothing less.
wonderful to me. So
Well, this is true. I'm not saying it as a bad thing. That's not a negative. I'm just saying don't be applying the 2016,
oh, sure,
thought logic as you're watching it. That's all I'm saying.
that's no problem.
All right, so Kelly, what about you? What's your next pick?
All right, I'm gonna go with Miami Vice.
Miami Vice. Crockett and Tubbs. All right, cool.
Yeah, Michael Mann. He kind of broke the mold, just kind of in a different way than Hill Street Blues, but he took the crime drama and made it look good, as well as it wasn't so much the writing was tremendous, but he brought the visual aspect to it more cinematic. He worked with people that were involved in movies to make it look right, and he copped a lot from MTV and music videos to make it interesting too, with the editing and the colors and the music. They paid real money to get the rights to use real songs, instead of just having cover tunes or just random, generic stock music. And they created characters, that were larger than life, and that somehow they were policemen, but they had access to, Ferraris and cigar boats and, $1,000 shoes, and, and they were living the life.
It definitely had a much different look to it than the other cop dramas.
Well, and they had committed, as far as the music goes, they weren't just using music from, MTV or whatever, but they were, they also had Jan Hammer was like the house guy that wrote all the scores. So there was consistency with all of the music. It all sounded kind of like as one. The show really, it resonated for me on a personal level because I was in college when it was on, and we used to play this. We had a drinking game that we played with it, and so we really got to know some of the characters' quirks. It's like when Lieutenant, the boss was Lieutenant Castillo, and basically, if he ever uttered a sentence that had less than 3 words, that was one of the cues to drink, and he never said anything more than 3 words at a time. So anytime he had a line, you were guaranteed to you had to drink. So that, it's like, but it was like kind of dumb, but kind of cool, and it looked good, and it was, a kind of an amusing diversion and different than anything else that you had seen. And that's kind of like why that show resonated with me. And, once again, it seems like everything I'm talking about ties into music somehow, but, that was definitely a part of my Friday night when I was off or when I was available. Or some bar nights didn't even start until after 9, and I think the show came out at 8, so, we could see it anyway. Miami Vice. I don't know if you guys ever watched that or had any thoughts on that.
I would watch Miami Vice every so often. Don Johnson just really... He's kind of boring, actually. I don't know. I thought to myself, okay, really put some socks on. Come on. But that was the look. And everybody, mimicked it. So later on, you would see 5 guys walking down the street with the fancy t-shirt and a jacket and no socks with the loafers. And I would just shake my head like, yeah, okay. But I would watch the episodes that actually had musical celebrities on it. So, like when Phil Collins was on it, I watched that one. And then Glenn Fry.
And Glenn Fry was on there a couple times, right? And they would have people come and go, which was kind of fun also.
Oh, yeah, because you didn't really get to see music. We had this conversation about Glenn Fry, Jesse Jackson and I did a couple months back after he passed, and we were reminiscing about celebrity musicians that would guest star on TV shows, and they always had like the hokiest lines, and they always, as if they did not know how to act, they only knew how to sing, and they would say something completely ridiculous and go, well, let me sing a song for you. And it's just like, okay, yeah, do what you do best, because the whole acting thing's not, But he made it believable. Him and Phil Collins both, just could have easily in life went either way, because they had that whole believable persona about them when they acted. So that made it really refreshing.
Yeah, I think for me, the cop dramas that were going on at that time, I gotten kind of force-fed the cop dramas earlier in life because my mom was really into, like, say, Barney Miller and Fish. My dad was like Rockford Files, and then so I think when I got to the age time frame that we're talking about, even though you guys really talked about Hill Street Blues and Miami Vice, I didn't really, I was watching TV on my terms at that point. And I think I was kind of standing against the cop dramas, other than maybe Chips.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Well, right, which, okay. Yeah, Chips was, okay. I used to check that one out, too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. I was just explaining why I don't have a lot to say about, either Hill Street Blues or Miami Vice. I'm aware of the shows and I understand the impact that they've had, but I can't say that I've seen a lot of the episodes. But, if I ever get a chance to dress like Crockett, I would. So,
cool.
Well, who wouldn't?
Yeah. Ooh, me? No.
Looking, it says you might have been more compelled by the show. They had originally considered Nick Nolte and Jeff Bridges for the role of Sonny Crockett. So,
wow.
If they had made that turn, you might have paid more attention to it. They also looked at Larry Wilcox of Chips, which I think Dave would have appreciated.
I don't know if he could have pulled that schmarmy off or not. That's some heavy duty schmarmy.
Yeah, he's way too sincere to be like that, I think. And like Philip Michael Thomas, he actually wasn't acting. I mean, like he was that character. He was very self-important and kind of a diva and
then what did he go on to do? Oh wait, he made an album.
At one point, Philip Michael Thomas rented a theater in Florida, and the only thing they showed there were movies that he starred in. That's how big his ego was.
My
That's a true
goodness.
story. Yeah, maybe we should all be so lucky as to have a theater showing only our movies.
I would have to make them first.
Rose, it's your next pick.
Well, this is tough because I don't know if I should save the best for last or go with my gut. Oh, what the hell. I have children in the 80s, for those of you that didn't know. And I was often a slave to their whims about what to watch on television. And
Okay.
the very first time my son said, Mom, this new show's coming on tonight. I don't want to watch it. I'm like, what's it called? He said, Alf. And I'm
There
like,
you go.
that's it? And he's like, yeah, it's about this alien. And he's from Melmac and he lives with his family, but he kind of got stuck on Earth, kind of like E.T. And I'm going, oh yeah, that's all we need is another E.T. Well, he forgot to fill in the part that he was a puppet. you know, he forgot that part, and so it was just like, oh, I'm actually expecting it to be something ridiculous and horrible looking, but they made him believable. I mean, he looks like an aardvark a little bit, sorta, but
hmm
my God, was he a smart aleck? And I thought, this is great. And the guy that was the dad, I can't remember who he was. He was the straight man for, his jokes, and he did such an amazing job being a straight man to all of that dialogue that they gave Alf for that show. And I loved it. I mean, I would get to the TV before they did. He's like, hey, you guys are going to miss Alf. And they're like, oh, okay. And it was just, it was different. It was very different. I didn't expect it to be nearly as, say, adult, but it was. Even then, they had kids, but the kids were a little advanced in age as well, and they pretty much did everything Alf told them to do. But that was the whole charm of him making the best of his time there on Earth. That and the fact that he threatened to eat the cat. I don't know how many times, but
Well, that was kind of like a running
yeah,
thing for him. He was fascinated with the cat. I always thought Alf was kind of like a little bit more on point Garfield. Like Garfield's kind of a little bit sarcastic and
hmm
a wiseacre and doesn't always like to listen and loves to eat. He always kind of reminded me of Garfield, but he had more edge to him than Garfield. I mean, Garfield was just vanilla, plain vanilla, but Alf was a
definitely,
little bit farther out there.
yeah,
So I
definitely,
appreciated that.
yeah. It was a good
And,
show.
and the actor you're talking about is Max Wright.
Thank you.
And consequently, he's the same guy. He was also in Misfits of Science.
Was
Oh,
he?
wow.
Yeah,
There you
so
go.
he
Amazing.
actually pretty much the same character, if you believe it or not. So,
That
uh,
is like very coincidental.
but
Interesting
yeah,
tie-in.
yeah, exactly. But
Cool.
I'm with you guys where, I guess when I first had heard of Alf, I had this feeling that it was going to be another Mork and Mindy,
Mm-hmm.
hmm
but
Mm-hmm.
it turned out to be, with that edge, like you were mentioning, Kelly. It was, now that you mention it, it's exactly a darker, not darker, but just an edgier Garfield. Yeah, that is a great comparison.
Yeah, it's a good show.
I think Rose is time traveling right now. She'll be
Yeah,
back.
I'm gone.
yeah, we need that. The flux capacitor, is it fluxing?
Yeah,
Make sure you get to 88 there.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna try.
Okay. So we are going round robin again. My next pick and my final pick is a TV show called The A Team. Yes, I had to go there. And what would happen is, um, I don't know if I really watched it when it was originally on, but I know that I saw many of the repeats.
Sure.
What had happened was in 1989, 18 years old, I had graduated high school 12 days after I joined the United States Navy. My first duty station was Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
And what would happen is that I lived in the barracks at Fort Myer, and we would meet up in the afternoon and after work, and my barracks mates that lived across the hallway from me, we would always watch the A-Team. So it was like a regular Monday through Friday evening thing. You know, it was like, let's get off work, let's quickly have something to eat at the chow hall, and then go watch A-Team in your room. So, you know, we would go in and, you know, the exploits of Hannibal and, you know, getting CPA Baracus not wanting to fly, and then they had to drug him in order to get him on the plane or the helicopter, whatever it was. You know, face the whole thing worked for me at that time. I couldn't get enough of the A-Team. I just loved that show. So that's yeah, that's my story on A-Team. What do you guys think of A-Team?
Well, I remember like it was like fun. You know, it was like kind of like fun and a goof and a good time. A lot of things blew up, and there was always a ramp hidden behind the car to make the van flip, and but it was a good time, and it was one of those shows. There were kind of constant returning characters, but it didn't have like a lot of really elaborate threads running through the plot. There were a couple of ideas that kind of went from episode to episode, but it kind of had a beginning and an end usually, so it was real easy to consume, and it was a good time. I mean, it wasn't like, I don't think they won a lot of Emmys, but like when you watch this kind of shows, you're not looking for that.
Right.
You're looking for the helicopters and the machine guns and the cool catchphrase and a joke or two and a cigar chomped, and then the hour's over. But it was what you wanted, and it worked.
Yeah, I love it when a plan comes together.
Absolutely.
There you go. Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, exactly.
That
And
was
it was just another on the list of, what was the guy's name? Stephen J. Cannell, who was the mastermind behind a lot of these shows, and I think he's still got some that are on. I don't know, but seemed like he was writing everything at one point.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think it was definitely, from my perspective, it was a guy's show. Like it was hard to get the sisters or the girlfriends to take a look at that at that point.
Well, yeah, I could see that. I could see that unless they wanted to just watch Face, Dirk Benedict.
He was boring.
Was he? Okay.
I like Mr. T.
Oh wow. Okay.
Well, everybody liked Mr. T though. I mean, he was
George
bigger than life.
Because I like George Papard.
Okay.
So.
See, because I would have figured that the Face character was in there to appeal to the female audience. I think that was the attempt, at least, right?
I'm sure, but they have to consider not every woman wants to look at that every day.
Wow. Okay.
Well, and I'm saying that because with the face comes baggage. Men like that who are gorgeous constantly are concerned about only one thing. Where do I get more hair tonic? Do I have creases in my pants? Does this make me look fat? Yeah.
Well, I've never been burdened with any of those concerns. So,
Kelly, you don't want it. It's a burden in my life. It really, just having to constantly worry about that, and where am I going to get my my hair cream? And yeah, it's difficult. It's a tough life.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah. That's hysterical.
But yeah, the other thing that with the A-Team, anytime they put like a sheet metal on something, all of a sudden it became bulletproof. I don't get that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, and that was one of those shows too where they would duck behind, like there would always be a gunfight in a warehouse or something, and there would be those wooden crates that really aren't good for shipping anything, but they have anyway, that are made of that really thin, almost like balsa wood, and they would duck behind a balsa wood box, and it would somehow protect them from automatic weapon fire.
See, that's the military's been getting it wrong all these years. They don't really need to have anything made out of titanium. Just
No,
grab a
it's
couple
like
of those crates.
balsa wood will do it.
Yeah, line the outside of your cans with them and go to town.
And you would figure like the bad guys would talk to each other and they would communicate and say something around the lines of, hey, if you ever catch these guys, don't put them in a room that has a blowtorch and all the tools that they'll need to build weapons.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well.
Oh, you hit upon that too. That you're right. There was some innovation when they would be confronted with, being held captive or enclosed, like trapped in a cave or something. They would always fashion some type of weaponry / technology that would save the day. And
right.
So there was kind of like there was like the embryonic kind of MacGyver kind of thing that flowed through there, occasionally too.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to beat up the A-Team. Kelly, what's your next pick?
I'm gonna go highbrow. I'm gonna go with Married with Children.
Oh my Lord.
Okay, Fox's first successful sitcom, right? I think ran forever for them. It set the tone for Fox at that point, which was get it done cheap. Make it a little bit raw and edgy. That was kind of like the Fox network when it started. That's what they were going for. They had The Simpsons, they had Cops, they had Married with Children. I can't name. Unfortunately, I can't name many more shows they had then. But I mean, those three shows kind of have remained relevant culturally. And that's a pretty good average for a fledgling network. But it was edgy, it was rude, but it was funny, and the casting somehow it set the tone for shows later, like Malcolm in the Middle, Family Guy to some degree, My Name is Earl. All these shows kind of need to pay homage to Married with Children to some degree because it kind of broke the ground for that kind of sitcom. Because before that, TV families were much less dysfunctional.
Oh, definitely.
And more traditional.
Well, except for All in the Family.
Right.
Oh yeah.
But even that one, like it was more, like there was still some underlying love and compassion in that family, definitely. But within the Bundys, I mean, there was nothing that you would mistake for compassion or, real love. It was very surface.
Unless they got fed.
Right. But, and then you look at the cast, and they did pretty well with the casting too, because Ed O'Neill's still relevant today. He's in Modern Family now, and Christina Applegate, was in the Anchorman movies, and she's done several TV shows that have run. And then who was the other guy? No, Katie Seagal was.
Yes. Well,
has had several roles. She was the voice in Futurama forever, and
Katie Seagal and Sons of Anarchy.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, she was awesome in that.
Oh yeah.
So it's like these people, they were in a very like low budget kind of low rent show, but they picked good people for it.
Yeah.
And they got it done. I was always a fan of. Well, and then the neighbor was Marcy. And she was kind of a pain in the behind.
Yeah.
But I didn't really like her, but I liked her. She had two husbands. She had Steve was her first husband. He was okay because he was kind of like a dish rag. And then they brought in Ted McGinley later, who was, kind of like a con man or something, I guess. And
he was just really stupid, actually.
I didn't like him. Yeah, it was like they could have had Jim.
Happy Days later.
Well, I think he was on Happy Days first.
No, I meant later in the episode.
Yeah, and later, he was. Well, he's like he's made a career of being the guy they bring in. He's like the relief pitcher for some reason. Like they would always go to him. I think he showed up on Welcome Back Kotter at one point.
Oh, really?
Way back in the day. I think that he was on Happy Days. I think you're right about that. I mean, I think he's been on all of these shows, when they've kind of peaked, like when they've jumped the shark, they bring him in. I guess they bring him in to finish the job,
Yeah.
to ride it
Yeah.
into the sunset.
He's
But
the extra character they add.
I think, and the thing most people remember is like how Christina Applegate, was like sexualized and stuff like that. No, that was true, but it was really about Ed and Peg, and
Mhm.
their dialogue, which was always kind of funny but perplexing and then kind of disturbing also at the same time.
Well, yeah. Yeah, she, to me, I would think, oh my God, look at this woman. She's gorgeous. She's got everything. Okay, maybe she doesn't have the best style and clothes, but, and he can't stand her. It's like, dude, what is your problem?
Well, he was, like he was miserable. He was a shoe salesman or whatever, and
Yeah.
they were constantly beating on him, and he didn't have anything, and the dog didn't like him, and
Yeah.
so he was like constantly living under a cloud.
Mhm.
Well, for me, Ted McGinley is always going to be Stan Gable from Revenge of the Nerds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, but going back to Al Bundy, though, Ed O'Neill, if you guys are fans of Modern Family, I think every so often they'll throw homage to Married with Children
Do they?
in that. Yeah, because I've seen like memes on the internet where they show him sitting there reading a paper, and it turns out to be the same paper that he was reading on an episode of Married with Children.
Does he
Yeah.
stick his hand in his pants?
Yeah, he hasn't done that yet. He hasn't done that. I love Modern Family, so I'm always
Yeah.
watching that. But I don't pick up on those subtle little clues back to that until somebody posts it
Oh,
on the internet, and
like
I go,
Easter egg.
"Oh yeah, look at that." All right, so like for instance, the newspaper. Like he's been reading the same newspaper for 30 years now.
Yeah.
I keep waiting for Katie Seagal to show up, as the neighbor or as a
Oh, I
guest
know.
or as someone's cousin or something. It just hasn't happened yet, but I guess it could.
Yeah, I
I'm over
think.
to that.
Oh crap, I forgot the name of the show. Um, Tim Allen, the show that he
Oh,
does
Home
now.
Improvement. Oh, Last Man Standing.
Last Man Standing, they pay homage a lot to that show.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's but that's way off topic.
Okay. Yeah.
So that was my show. It's like I figured, I could have gone PBS or something, but I went with Married with Children. It's almost the same.
You're highbrow.
Sure. Yeah.
All right, so Rose, third pick.
Okay. Well, save the best for last in my book because the only time you could watch this show was like at night. And the only time I really got to watch TV when I wanted to watch TV was at night. And when I first saw it, I didn't know who any of these people were. The show I'm referencing is Night Court.
Oh,
Night
I
Court,
almost
awesome.
talked about that one. Yeah.
I first found it and I thought, really? Somebody made a show about being in court at night? Wow. But it really wasn't about that. You get to see people every so often that were getting, subpoenaed or convicted or something, but it was mostly about the people that work there. And John Larroquette ended up being my favorite character. His character is my favorite person on there because once again, smart Alec always wins out. And
yeah.
he wasn't just he was vicious. And he didn't have a kind word to say about anyone. And he was very self-indulgent and very arrogant. But I want to say he knew his stuff because a lot of times a lot of his clients ended up needing other counsel or they ended up getting off where they should have been convicted. But the premise of the show was just really funny. They had a lot of really good characters. The guy that played Bull, he played the big, kind of dumb guy, but had a heart of gold. And then I believe that Marsha Wallace come in later, because I know there was a couple of character shuffles around. I think she came in later, and the little lady that was Sylvia I can't think of her last name, but she went on to go. She did Beetlejuice. She did that movie Beetlejuice, the first one that was in that show as the older. Or am I thinking of the wrong person?
Oh,
Anyway,
I
the
don't
older
know.
one, the older woman that was one of the guards, she had a very short-lived career on it, and then she passed away. And then they brought in Sylvia, uh, whatever her last name is. Wikipedia, thank you. Um, I I just just that whole team did a really
That
good job.
that was a show for me that kind of, when I was a kid, Barney Miller was on, and you guys talked about Barney Miller too. But if you look at it, it was funny, but it was kind of on point also, and occasionally it made a political point or it made a societal point. And
Hmm.
some of the same people that did Barney Miller were actually involved in Night Court behind the scenes. So
Nice.
when it first came on, it kind of had like a mix of, it was very funny, but it was very smartly written, and the characters were very well conceived. You had the whole scenario where they're in court, so it's structured, but it's like at night,
Mhm.
so it's loose, and there's a lot of weird things that happen, and a lot of funny things that happen, and the judge had a lot more latitude,
Yeah.
with things than he might have had during the day when everyone's paying attention. But that made it good, and the cast was excellent. It's one of those things where almost everybody worked,
Yeah.
at some level. I mean, even
Definitely.
Marky Post, everyone's dad watched it because Marky Post was on there too. So, it's like, but I mean, Harry was great,
Hmm.
as the main character, and it was just, it was one of those shows that was like a cut above in terms of the writing for the first 2/3 of the run, and then after that, it kind of settled in and
Hmm.
went on cruise control a little bit, but
Right.
um, it was real solid, and I don't know how many Emmys they won, but I'm sure there were many, many, many Emmys won for that show.
Yeah, and well deserved is due because there was really nothing on like it going.
No,
Yeah,
so Dave,
I tried to find the person you're referencing, Rose, but
Uh-huh.
there's way, way, way too many people associated with the show
Okay.
to get through. But
I'll figure it out. I'll do a
uh,
follow-up later.
yeah, but the Richard Bull,
Yeah.
he was my favorite.
Yeah.
I loved him. Exactly what you guys were saying about Harry, about how he kind of had a very approach with being very casual about it. So I liked
Mm-hmm.
it when he would try to do like a magic trick,
Mm-hmm.
when he's trying to decide a case or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just very randomness, and then you had his love of Mel Torme in there. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
just a
Velvet Blonde.
overall very funny, lighthearted show
Mm-hmm.
that if you were to originally look at the concept and you go, okay, it's going to be a court show. I mean, you're
Yeah.
right. It wasn't about the cases at all. It
Yeah.
was just the characters,
Right.
hmm,
and everybody loved to hate Dan Fielding. So,
Oh, of course. He deserved it.
yeah. All right. So those are our picks, and when I first were going to do this episode, I tweeted out asking for what everyone's favorite 80s TV show was, and I had gotten so many great responses.
Did
So I'm
you?
going to try to read through some of these, or actually all of them.
okay.
First one that I got was Hero at CryptoByte, and the response was pretty tough question. Maybe Star Trek: The Next Generation, Cheers, or MacGyver.
I had
Wow.
uh, I had Star Trek Next Generation as my fourth one. If you guys pressed me, or if someone had a duplicate, like that of what I was going
Right.
to do,
Oh, okay.
and
So you had that as your backup. I gotcha.
yeah, I thought that one was really important, because it kind of built on and improved upon the original Star Trek. Although that would probably create a lot of arguments online if I say that. Um, but I mean, the budget was a little better.
Yeah.
The acting was a little bit more on par, minus a couple of people, and they made it work. It was a different model for even showing it, where none of the networks wanted to pay the money to produce it, so Paramount put it out as a syndicated first run show, which wasn't really that common. So it kind of set precedence both with the content and as well as with how it was actually presented. But Captain Picard, was obviously a classically trained actor, and he brought an air of sophistication and made it a little more serious, to be taken more seriously than maybe how it had been looked at in the past. And it was good because Star Trek, toward the end of it, like the budgets got smaller for the original show, and they started doing a lot more of those. They're kind of down on earth, or they're gangsters or they're whatever. And that's because they weren't willing to spend any money for the effects. But, this show kind of ramped it up again. And, effects were an integral part of at least, most of the episodes. So it gave the fanboys a lot of different things that they wanted. Plus, the characters were relatively interesting to people after they got used to it. But, I really enjoyed that one, too. And, I thought Q was great. They brought him back. Data would run amok. That was always great. I mean, there were just a lot of good things in the show.
I agree. I was a fan of Star Trek The Next Generation. Definitely enjoyed watching that one. And even though I know there's a lot of Wesley Crusher haters, not for me. I wanted to be Wesley Crusher.
Yeah.
So, Will Wheaton, you're still my man.
Most
Well,
kids
he's still a lot of people's man. Actually, he's still out there. He's everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So Larry Franks at Larry A. Franks says, I'd have to say the Dukes of Hazzard. Matt D at Matt Duck 21 says amazing stories with 2 exclamation points.
Oh, Steven Spielberg. Yeah, that was good. That was like, kind of like the Twilight Zone meets, one of his movies, kind of thing, and it was shot with some of the values of like cinematography and stuff, more like a movie. So yeah, that was good.
Let's see. Darshan at Darshan85 says it's got to be hashtag Quantum Leap. Gotta love the theme tune also. Hashtag oh boy.
I like that one too, and they didn't have to spend tons of money always to get the idea across. Like once you bought into the fact that he was going to be another place or as another person, they didn't have to have fancy sets and everything. It was like they made it work. Like you bought the concept, and that's what I think sold it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Bongus at Richard Nixon 6 says the A-Team. So my pick also.
There you go. Great minds.
Yep. Evil Larry Franks at Evil Larry Franks. So this is actually, I'm guessing, a duplicate Twitter handle for our Dukes of Hazzard guy, because he says I'd have to say the Dukes of Hazzard. So he's throwing in 2 votes for Dukes of Hazzard.
Dukes of Hazzard was a great show in 2 decades, actually. So I think, didn't it cross over?
Yeah, it did.
Although maybe the last season wasn't so great after they lost Bo and Luke. But
yeah. Well, I don't think that's definitely jumping the shark for them. So
I didn't have Ted McGinley to jump in.
He wasn't available. He was already on Married with Children or something.
Just bring in Cousin Oliver. All right. So Christopher Varble at Loki FX says, I can't narrow it down to one, so I'll go with Greatest American Hero and The Phoenix. So I'm surprised Greatest American Hero hasn't come up yet. Definitely was one of my favorites.
Yeah. William Catt was really good in that. I just didn't watch enough of it. That was another one of those theme song shows that once I got done with the theme song.
Oh, yeah.
I was done with it. So, yeah.
I didn't see that one a lot. I don't know how. I mean, but it certainly has survived, through time, because people still reference it all the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a fun series.
Connie Selica, totally gorgeous.
You'll see it again.
So Angela at WizzyMop68 says, ooh, Fame, probably. Couldn't wait to watch every week. Leg warmers at the ready.
There you go. That was my sister's show, but not mine so much. but I mean, I can definitely see why it would have appeal because there was a lot of performing and a lot of if you're into that stuff.
Right.
I know, and the movie was big, so I'm sure people love the movie, love the show too, or a lot of them. So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, with Rose though, for me, I love the theme song. So I may have loved the theme song more than I liked the show.
Well,
I actually probably watched a couple episodes of that
Yeah.
only because it had something that appealed to me. It was the whole performance
Sure.
Well,
aspect.
that was actually the first. It was one of the first shows. Like they kind of picked up on that with Glee and a lot of other things later. But
Mhm.
it kind of set the bar at that point for shows that revolved around actual performing, where they actually had to do choreography and figure out
Mhm.
music and everything for a weekly series. It was really ambitious to do that because
Yeah.
that costs money, and no one wanted to spend money at that point.
No.
All right. So Colt Commando at Colt Commando says hashtag Star Trek TNG, of course. So
Yeah,
another
there you
Star
go.
Trek there. Rachel Brown at Rachel Loretta says Taxi, Greatest American Hero, Knight Rider, Wonder Years. Watch them all. Hashtag 80s TV junkie.
Nice.
Well, Taxi. No, it's impossible to argue against Taxi.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, definitely.
that was another one like where the writing and the casting was almost perfect, for the first few seasons. So no argument.
And I think this is the first time somebody's brought up Knight Rider and
Yeah.
also Wonder Years. I mean, how could we have gone so far into the show without talking about Kevin and Winnie?
Because we didn't pick it.
Because we only had 3 picks. That's why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we had like 3-hour marathon podcasts,
Oh, we'd cover everything
Well,
just about.
and Wonder Years was great, but that was like in my college years. That was my the last year of school when it started. So I was like fully involved in things that were both academic and non-academic. That took me away from the TV at that point.
understood.
So I don't really have a basis for that one, but I know a lot of people love to talk about it even now.
Yeah.
Yeah, very iconic for the time. Let's see. Big Chris at Big Chris 8089 has gave 3 favorites, and they are actually graphics. So Alf, Out of This World, and Kelly, your pick, Friday Night Videos.
Nice.
Wow.
See,
Who
there is
knew?
somebody else out there that watched that.
At least 2 of us.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Jason R. Wells, ESQ at JR Wells 82 says there's too many to name, but top 3 are The A-Team, Growing Pains, and Alf.
Nice.
Growing Pains didn't come up either. Okay.
Yeah, Growing Pains didn't make our list. Gary Smith at Gary Smith R10 says quite liked Moonlighting, hashtag Bruce Willis. Great theme tune.
Mm-hmm. I actually watched that and the theme tune that went along with it.
I like that show. I did enjoy watching that one.
They had good chemistry together, him and Sybil Shepherd.
Yep.
Oh yeah, yeah. The whole country was immersed in that when they finally got together too. That was huge.
I stopped watching it after.
That would have crashed. That would have crashed Twitter if we'd had it back then.
Definitely, it would have. That's funny.
All right, so Andrew in Belfast, at Andrew in Belfast, actually tweeted a really cool graphic. It's Sam Malone in his Red Sox picture, looks like a baseball card. So
Nice.
it's his picks were Cheers, Dallas, and Knight Rider.
Nice.
Okay. Hard to argue. I mean, Dallas is like very symbolic of the time now when you look at it in retrospect.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I mean, they brought it back too for a while.
Well, yeah,
so.
but I don't know.
Yeah, but Cheers, it's impossible to argue with Cheers. I mean, that's another one where the casting was right on and the writing was spot on.
Right.
Yeah.
How come no one mentioned Bosom Buddies with Tom Hanks and Peter Scolari?
I don't know.
I keep waiting for that one to come up.
I mean, I
didn't
enjoyed
watch
that.
it.
I enjoyed it. I just don't know if it would have been in my top. I don't know if it would have been in my top 10, maybe. I don't know.
I enjoyed it at the time, but like when you look at it now, I guess it might not play so well.
Right.
Well, same thing can be said for Perfect Strangers.
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it too much of a nucleus to be interesting, or I don't know.
All right, so a couple more to go through. 80s Junkie at Ballstar77 says Incredible Hulk, which we podcast about, MacGyver, and Airwolf.
Nice.
There's a thread that runs through that. Didn't Stephen Cannell do Airwolf too?
He might have.
Probably.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of vibe, you know. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm wrong a lot. But, okay.
We're wrong all the time on the show, so no worries. You fit right in.
Awesome.
So Pixel Monkey at Pixel Monkey 1 did not get the memo about only 3 picks. So Knight Rider, A-Team, Monkey, Street Hawk, Terrahawks, Airwolf, Nightmare, Blockbusters, ... So many great shows. So
wow.
So there's a lot of picks there.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good shows.
Monkey, are you familiar with that one?
No,
I don't know that one.
No, I don't know what that is.
I think it's like a Japanese martial arts kind of import type of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if I remember right, I seem to remember somebody sending me a clip at one time, and I thought it was pretty cool, but I'd only seen maybe the first 15 minutes of one of the episodes. But it had a very martial arts / mystical, magical kind of feel to it.
It ran from 1978 to 1980, and it was produced by Nippon Television and TV. So it was an import.
Okay.
Also referred to as Monkey Magic, which is the name of the theme song. So, wow, you learn something every day, though, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, you do.
I didn't remember that at all.
Okay, Christopher Warren at Christopher Zen, who's actually one of our podcasters on 80s music or 80s Auto Reverse mixtape, chose Miami Vice.
Nice.
There you go.
30-something podcasts at 30 podcasts. Technically, it started in the hashtag 80s Quantum Leap. So another Quantum Leap fan. 80s Car Dude at Homer Torelli says Knight Rider. And the last one, Real Ouija Midge blog at Real Ouija Midge, has to be hashtag Dallas, of course.
Wow.
So like I said, we had a lot of responses on that question on Twitter.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even in that small sample, you can start to see some threads where there's some, kind of trends. It's like everyone was into it was Belisario was the other producer. It was like Belisario and Stephen J. Cannell shows and Dallas and the sitcoms. It was like people were all over that stuff. It was like,
yeah.
I wouldn't have thought of Dallas necessarily. I considered it briefly, but now that I think about it, it really was important at the time. So I could see how people would call that one up.
Yeah.
I mean, it was another one of those things that had a very iconic arc to it because you had that everybody was like, "Who shot JR?" And you think about shows like that, or you think about the last episode of MASH. When you think of the 80s, just those kind of things are just kind of iconic for that time period. Yeah, there's something significant that happened, and it kind of breached over the, for those that didn't even watch the show, because it was all over the place. It'd be like on Time Magazine or something.
Sure.
Yeah. Final thoughts on 80s TV shows. Kelly, what do you think?
I think that there's a depth and width of programming in spite of our technological limitations back then. I wish we were rivaling now on broadcast TV. Now you have to look at cable or the offshoot channels to see the good stuff, or the streaming channels. I wish the real networks would kind of get back to putting stuff out that had as much variety and as much, interesting content as they were doing 30 years ago with far less resources. I mean, that's the thing that strikes me the most.
Okay. Rose, final thoughts.
I don't really have any final thoughts on 80s TV programming per se. I did kind of want to give a shout out to one of my later favorites that didn't last very long, but it was very funny. And a gentleman that played the title character, David Raish. If anybody ever watched Sledgehammer, it was on for 2 years or 2 seasons or however where you want to pull it. But that was to me just very cutting edge. I mean, because here's yet another cop show. But wait, oh my goodness, he doesn't know what he's doing. And yet somehow he thinks he does. So it's just like from one, and they had like so many directors. Like I think it was like a director and a writer for just numerous episodes that they had. I mean, Bill Bixby was actually a director on one of the shows, and there's other people that were involved in this. And how they managed to keep the continuity of the show with all these different writers and directors was just, a miracle. Like Kelly said, 30 years ago, television programming was so much different than it is now. And they actually put some thought and planning into it. And people actually knew how to write and get their point across without, boring the audience or, oh, well, look, someone else is getting blown up or something like that. But I mean, he would blow stuff up, but it was his fault. So I don't know. I just like the show. It kind of took me aback the first episode I saw of it, and his catchphrase, "I know what I'm doing," and he never did. Yep. So that to me kind of sums it all up.
Very, very akin to I love it when a plan comes together, or Hannibal's got the jazz.
So, yeah, there you go.
Gotta have a catchphrase, I guess.
You do.
I'm really kind of disappointed in actually all of us because we went through this whole episode and no one brought up Max Headroom. So if you watch my Twitter feed, every so often I'll throw up a graphic that says Max Headroom, presidential candidate 2016.
I tweet it every time. Just wasn't that interesting to me.
So I couldn't let the show end without at least giving a little bit of attention to Mr. Max Headroom for what it was, very iconic, pop icon for the 80s. Definitely. It's tough to not think of the 80s and not think of Max Headroom somewhere in that mix. Well, yeah. But I think a lot of what you guys are saying is true, where there was, in the 80s, we had this original thought process that was going on. These shows that had original thoughts and original ideas, and it feels like a lot of modern day TV kind of rehashes those concepts. So, it was great to be around in the 80s and witness the original thought process and be surprised by TV. Whereas, nowadays that's kind of hard to come by. There's shows that still do that, but they're, maybe, like Kelly, you were mentioning where, we have to go to a cable show or Netflix original or something like that in order to get that kind of flavor now, because everything else is kind of the same formula that we've already seen that was introduced to us in the 80s. So that's kind of my wrap up for, the TV shows.
I agree. Well said.
Thanks. So, social media credentials. Kelly, how can people find you online?
I'm everywhere. Just go to genericmail.com. That's MALE, not MAIL. Genericmail.com. If you Google Generic Mail DJs, you'll find all of our stuff too. We've got the videos, we got the web page, all the social media stuff, the Facebook page, which is getting big. So look forward to seeing or meeting new people through this. And like I said, we got a big thing tomorrow that I know no one's going to want to miss.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, actually, when this posts, I'm sure it'll be out by a few days because this probably won't post until like Tuesday.
Well, what I'm doing tomorrow will be trending on Twitter by noon. So
awesome
for that.
Wow.
Look for that.
Definitely.
All right. So, Rose, what's your social media credentials?
I am at 80's Music Girl on Twitter, at 80's Music Girl on Facebook, And where else am I? Oh, 80s Music Girl on Instagram.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm Dave. Take care of our 80s Reboot accounts. So that's at 80s Reboot on Twitter, 80sreboot.tumblr.com on Tumblr. On Facebook, we're at facebook.com/80sreboot. If you ever want to email us, 80sreboot@gmail.com. And we also have a blog. That's southgatemediagroup.com/80srebootblog. Most importantly, what I want you to do is take a moment and give us a rating and review on iTunes. That's going to help us with our 80s domination of the world. So we need you to go in there and, you can only give 5 stars, but if you can give us 6, that'd be really awesome. Find a way to do that. That'd be really awesome and cool. If you got some bad things to say, then it's all Kelly's fault.
Say them. Yeah, you can come and say it on our Facebook page. Don't burn Dave's stuff.
No. Yeah, if you got a problem with me, well, we can take it outside.
Ooh. We're going there. We're going gangsta now.
Oh, I'm going to close the door and let them be outside, but yeah.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right. So it's like a roadhouse thing. You go outside, just take it outside.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we appreciate everybody reliving the 80s with us, and have a good night.
Everybody.
Take care. Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this show. This podcast is part of the 80s Reboot Overdrive channel on Southgate Media Group. You can follow us on Facebook on the 80s Reboot group page. We're also on Twitter and Tumblr at 80s Reboot. We invite you to check out all the wonderful podcasts and blogs available at southgatemediagroup.com. And thank you for reliving the 80s.